Morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Talk. Kevin said I got to shout because we're right by the highway and it's loud. And mostly, I just wanted to say happy birthday because statistically speaking, you have a birthday this week. Sheena found this article, which we've been getting a chuckle about in our family because 9 of the top 10 most common days to be born are between September 9 and September 20.
Wow.
So you think in that 11-day stretch, the majority of people are born, with the top five being at number 5, September 10, then 4, September 17th, then September 12. Number 2 is September 19, which is fitting because we have like 2 people in our church and 1 associated who share, 2 people in our church have that birthday.
2 that we know of. Maybe there's more.
Maybe there's more. And then the most common is September 9.
Wow.
And so, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Because you probably have a birthday today or know someone who does. And so, in our family, this week we have 2.
Wow.
We hit the 17th and the 19th.
Is that why you like September so much? It's just new life all over the place?
It's a lot of like planning birthdays and then anniversaries and then but it's fun. It's great. It's good times.
Oh, it's great.
Anyways, just with that aside, we just wanted to make sure we're celebrating appropriately. But let's look back a little bit on our service this last week. And before we get to the seriousness that you brought from 1 John, I want to talk about fakes a little bit. And have you
Is there a fake for Sean?
Well, have you ever either intentionally been shopping for a knockoff product or have you bought something that you thought was legit and then you started to question it? And as you think, it came up because we were shopping last night and Micaiah all of a sudden said, hey, how do you think this thing would be marketed on Temu? And we love to make fun of Temu because I'm pretty sure it's like, if you want a fake product, go to Temu. I have no credit, I don't have evidence to verify that, but that's my suspicions. Because it just seems like they took the Asian market experience and moved it online. Like when Sheena and I were in Malaysia, we sought out because we thought it would be fun. You're in, culturally appropriate. We're going to go to one of those night markets, and you just know walking through, like a Rolex should be more than $20, right? Like it just should be more than $20. So you're like, that's not going to be legit.
I had that experience in Mexico when we were coming back over the border. It was always that last market just before you cross the border. Right. And it was always like, Oakley's for $5 and, all these other things. And I remember trying to find some of those. But I actually specifically at times have tried to look for, if you have a Mac or something like that and you have all the accessories.
Yes.
If you have a Mac, I always do not get the official Mac accessory because there's so many other ones that will fill in that gap for a quarter of the price.
And they will look almost identically design-wise, but they, like you said, a quarter of the price. I know. We would sometimes take youth shopping in Victoria and you would go into some of these back alley stores and you'd be like, I don't remember Oakley being spelled that way before. As an example. Or they'd have like Zippor lighters. And you're like, I don't know. There's lots of that kind of stuff around. Jeff, come on.
I am struggling to remember a time.
Safety harnesses?
Right,
Yeah, I'm pretty careful to make sure that I buy appropriate, life-saving equipment. But
Jeff never wants to support any kind of black market goods.
No, my experience overseas buying something that I thought was one thing and was another was not buying something that I thought was something I knew. It was just like, I thought this would taste a lot different than it does. So that's my experience. So I'm struggling to find where I bought a fake. It's just more like, this is disappointing because I thought it was going to be something else. But I'm sure there's some fake, stuff that wasn't what I thought I was buying. But sorry.
No, that's all good. All good. I mean, it's an interesting thing that we were watching a show the other day. Even it's an older one, and the family was Taiwanese, and they go back to Taiwan, and they're like trying to buy Nike shoes, and he puts them on for the first time, and they just fall apart as he takes 3 steps, right? And I guess the question is, because in 1 John, right, we were talking about that group that had this secret knowledge, and often what happened was they were promoting kind of an artificial Jesus, right? Some kind of a fake, inauthentic version of it, but trying to pass it off by being like, oh, we got the goods, we got that inside kind of thing. And I guess the question is, how do we know that we've like started following the authentic Jesus,
right,
and not ended up with some kind of an artificial version that looks good from afar, but when you get up close, you realize, oh no, this is misspelled. This is not going to last. The stitching isn't the same. And all that kind of stuff, right? The markers of authenticity we would look for to know that something is legit. How do we know?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm going to give the answer.
No, I thought I was going to give the answer.
Okay,
so this is my the answer. Is as you're reading through Lee Strobel's Case for Christ, he keeps coming back to, okay, if you want to know whether something is true, you look at what's around it, especially. So if you want to find out, did this thing actually happen, you talk to all the witnesses and, compare and all of that. Because if all of their answers are literally word for word, then you know that, they are actually probably lying because they act, right? Like
they got together and corroborated and colluded.
Or if it's just completely out to lunch and all over the place, then okay, maybe let's question that a little bit as well. So, but when it's the same story from a different perspective, that matters. So what I think is amazing is that John was one of the witnesses to Christ. All of the other apostles were witnesses to Christ himself and these words that were given and the teaching that was given, even in the teaching that was given that we don't have, right? There's probably a lot of like campfire discussions where Jesus was teaching his disciples and we don't have that written down, but we have the essence of it in what the scripture says, but also what the apostles brought to that in those letters afterwards. So that's where it was like, okay, looking at the testimony of John and the apostles, you can know that these words of Christ are true, and Christ himself was the real deal because of all those things that happened around it. That's answer.
That's awesome.
It's a great answer.
That's really good. So I'll just go carry that kind of into what I was going to say is First John is all about John's tests for knowing. And the biggest one that he keeps coming back to is love. Are you growing in love? These people with the secret knowledge, they weren't, and they were causing disruption and chaos and all this stuff, right? And he's like, it will look like love, and if you love God, you will love your neighbor, and if you love your neighbor, that's proof that you love God. So that's the one test. Another test is righteousness, and it's really related because it's right living, right? Even in the passage from Sunday, he stacked up all the testimonies, right? The testimony, like, you saw him, we saw him, you've heard about it from us, who saw him, like you're saying, testimony, be baptized. And what happened at his baptism, when the dove came down and everything, but that didn't disappear at his death. He actually died, and the blood is a testimony, right? And then the Spirit testifies of God, the Father testifies of God, the Son testifies, and now we testify, right?
Yeah.
So how many testimonies are walking around? Unfortunately, we have a lot of people who believe fake Jesus or aren't really following that make that testimony look bad. But that's, again, they're not in the test where are we loving? Are we,
Which sounds like fruit. Like fruit, bearing fruit is a metaphor that's used a lot in Scripture.
Yeah.
I think when we try and authenticate a living testimony, which is what we are as followers of Jesus, living testimonies, the question then relates to what is the fruit of that? Is it look like love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control, right? Does it look like this?
You got them all.
Right? And so, hey, our youth, a little bit surprising to me. I'm like, oh, they're like just singing on the ride up. That's awesome. They were breaking out into the song on that one, so it helps me. I had a cheat sheet.
Thank you. That warms my heart that they're...
Anyways, so, right, and because that then would be, I guess, the next question that a skeptic or a doubter might have is, well, how do we know that these testimonies are true? Like, we're reading a testimony of someone 2,000 years ago. How do we know it's authentic? Well, there's actually still today living testimonies.
Yeah.
And that's what we are invited into and actually commissioned into to be, as Jesus said, go and, bear witness.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Yes, we tell the stories, but it also comes out in how we live.
Bless?
Yes.
Yep, like we talked about? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great. Good. Thank you for bringing it back to Bless, because it's
Right.
important too. But anything else to add on that? As we encourage people to test any kind of anything that sounds like new revelation or secret knowledge or a version of Jesus that we're not sure about. How do we know if it's authentic?
I love coming back to the fruit of the Spirit. I mean, I love that you did that, because that really is in Galatians, there's the contrary, the other side. What's the opposite is the fruit of the flesh, right? All the divisiveness and all that kind of stuff is what you're seeing causing divisiveness. Is it causing or is it loving? I mean, Jesus was controversial. People rejected or accepted him, but he when you came to him, you were part of love and joy and peace and patience, right? And so, but you know what? The Bible is meant to be pondered, thought about, talked about,
tested,
right?
So and that's why it does
that's a John phrase,
stand the test of time.
Test the Spirit, test the test.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing to catch, right? Because there's a difference between division and disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's really good.
And sometimes I think we forget that, right?
Yeah.
The Bible doesn't encourage us to hate people who disagree with us, which is often what comes out of some of the divisiveness.
Yes.
Is that we see them as an unredeemable other.
Yeah.
The Bible's no, Jesus can redeem all things. So, what's the outcome? Because we can disagree, but we can still pursue Jesus and understand that he's not calling us to hate other people, but still stand for what we see and believe is truth. And that. So, Kevin, any other things to add before we move on?
No, good.
Wonderful then. In a moment, we're going to look ahead, but I was trying to think about what's the look now. Is it look around?
Well, look around.
I think maybe look around, right? We looked back, we're going to look ahead in a minute, but looking around.
We got to explain why we're looking this way.
Well, and as you were talking at one point, right, Charlie walked right by us.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was intentional, he just wanted to, get on screen.
I wonder if he waved.
I was focused on what you said. I just thought that
me too. I was watching that.
Because the parking lot is like a hub of activity this week.
Yeah.
Right? We've got, not only in the far distance, guys are working on what will be the playground for the daycare for Sophia's Academy. We also have a group that is doing some parking lot repair.
Yeah. And working hard all week.
Man, I am so glad the temperatures are not
skyrocket.
They're warm.
Yeah.
It's hot, but it's not kill you hot.
Yeah.
So they're working hard at patching and repairing.
So all that to say is, yes, I know that our faces are shaded and the sun is on our back. Yes, I know that there's lots of noise over here, and we'll have to try and pull that all out in post. Hopefully it won't be as noisy. But it's so that as you look over our shoulders, you can actually see a lot of this work happening.
Some cones over there, patches, and then guys working on fencing for the playground.
Yeah, it's all intentional.
I think they said 23 patches there.
Yeah.
And those patches, there's a lot of work on each patch.
Some of them are big. Some of them are large.
Yep.
And that's not all the patches.
Yeah.
So there's still lots more to come in the future, but this is what will get us a year or two or three.
Some of the big ones that were problems are
trying to extend the life, buy some time.
For a parking lot. Yeah.
Anyways, we wanted to make sure you were aware of all of that was going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked back, we've looked around, looking ahead, plans for the 50th. We're going to keep talking about it until it happens, because we're only a few weeks away from our big 50th, from the feast and the focus, right? Time to come together, share some laughs, share some food. and reflect on. For me, the idea of feast and focus often brings like, we often encourage people, right, that with that verse, like taste and see that the Lord is good. And that's what we want to do that weekend. Is we're gonna share a meal because we love doing that. It's also biblical. And we're gonna really talk and tell stories about what God has done.
We're gonna feast on the goodness of God, right? Like
primarily,
the feast is more about that than about abundance of food, but we are going to enjoy some food.
Do you know what it reminds me of? That phrase? So sometimes if you listen to somebody who's actually a really good speaker, sometimes they will take you from, laughter to tears to actually, here's my main point. And then you go back to laughter again, but you've experienced this whole thing. So it's almost like we're going to feast, we're going to party, we're going to enjoy, we're going to have some tears maybe. And then we're actually going to come to this moment of focusing and putting this all together and realizing that the life of our church actually is extremely varied, and we're going to celebrate all of that in that whole weekend. So,
but God is active in all of it and has plans for us, and has worked in us and through us. It's awesome.
It's going to be a great weekend. My understanding is that we are not still selling tickets for the dinner.
Right.
And so if you miss that, you can always try calling the office. I just don't know that there's any still left. But definitely come on the Sunday morning on the 6th, because we will pack as many people into the auditorium as we can. And that'll be great. We do have people coming out of town for the weekend. It's going to be a great celebration, and we're excited. We hope you are too, and making plans.
50 years. Pretty awesome.
There's not too many things that are over 50, as I understand
Neither of you are. I get to be like, yes.
That's great. We, of course, know a lot of you are.
There's a lot of my age and older
wisdom
too.
for us younger folk. And then, anything else that our church needs to be aware of this week?
I think we should say, let's be praying for Sophia's daycare. This is a couple that's just wants to serve our community. I mean, they are investing a lot to get this going. They have 30, as far as I understand, 30 families on the wait list to be in, have daycare, so we can have influence on, 30 families' lives just by being in our building. Been praying for just the future of 50 years, the next 50 years. So
Super. Well, then thanks for spending a few minutes with us today. And we look forward to connecting on Sunday, and if not, real soon. See you later.